Business with a servant's heart. Welcome to the podcast. Inspiration, motivation takes. Listen to the podcast. We're all about to talk about life. Our guests will share their life story. We want you to success in life and business. We're ready and we will start shortly. We're gonna talk about life. We're going to speak on business. You're gonna shine bright. We are going to witness. Business with a servant's heart. With hosts Steve, Ramon, and Ray. Inspiration, education talks. Listen to the podcast.
Welcome, everyone, to Doing Business with a Servant's Heart podcast. I'm your host, Steve Ramona, and I am thrilled to have you join us today. The podcast is dedicated to exploring the idea of doing business and living life with a purpose. Yes, serving others and achieving success. We believe that when we approach our work and our lives with a servant's heart, we can truly make a difference. We created this show for you because we want everyone to be motivated, inspired, and educated to make an impact in your world. Keyword is your there. Make a difference. Hey, whether you're an entrepreneur, community leader, or simply someone looking to bring more purpose into your daily life, this podcast is here to support you. While listening to this show, and boy, I've got a resource today. You better have a pad and paper because you're going to write this down or have to go back to the podcast and listen because we're going to help some of you podcast hosts out there and a lot of other people. I want you to think about how you're going to serve today and what impact you'll create today. Now, today's episode is brought to you by our amazing sponsor, Pantheon Alliance. Picture yourself joining an elite community of high-income, successful business owners and entrepreneurs from a variety of industries, all working together to create a powerful referral marketplace and get educated as well. It's an incredible opportunity to expand your network and elevate your business to new heights. If you have any questions, just reach out to me. You all have my contact info. We'll go from there. So I really built this up, and there's a good reason that this guest, he's amazing. His background is amazing, but you know what it is? He truly has a servant's heart. He's out there really to support people and help them. Robert, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I want to dive into your book and IMDb. We were talking about when we first met, and I've done it. It's been very successful for me. Talk about that and how you can help podcast hosts and other people with IMDb.
Sure. IMDb is the most amazing thing I found that almost no one knows about that will help you rank at the very top of Google searches. Just because it helps with your SEO, you have to be consistent with it. You have to know what you're doing. But it used to be you had to be on television or in films to qualify for an IMDb profile, which of course is Internet Movie Database, which is owned by Amazon. Every movie you find, every actor or actress, every television show from 100 years ago till now is in that database. We've got 300 or 400 films ourselves in there, and it's just amazing because what it accomplishes for everyone, myself included, is top of Google search rankings at a very low price point. Someone can spend under $2,000 a year with our agency to get those rankings versus spending $10,000 a month in Google ads, which I think is absolutely insane, or $5,000-$6,000 a month in paid SEO just to get you ranked at the top. IMDb does all the heavy lifting for you. And as I said before, you used to have to be in film and television, as I am, to qualify, but only recently they've opened it up to podcast host, and not only podcast host, but podcast guests. So anyone out there who's ever been on a podcast, you qualify for an IMDb profile. We can get that all set up for you, show you exactly how to list every podcast that you're on, and you'll be amazed at what it does for your search rankings. Absolutely unbelievable what it does.
And audience, I know a lot of you are podcast hosts and guests because I talked to a lot of you. We're going to get his contact info at the end. It will be in the show notes. But this is something that's a game changer. I'm so excited. Every time I see Robert or I see a message from out in the the social media, I get excited because as you said, it's a unique tool that people don't know about, and you jump on early, it could really help you. Tell the story of what IMDb did for you and what your daughter told you.
Yeah, my daughter, it's funny. She's 31 years old now, so she's a big fan of Robert Smith and The Cure, who's, he's roughly my age, so he's been around a long time. My daughter obviously hasn't been around a long time, but she likes him. And she's expert on IMDb. Even before I started doing films, I did a lot of television, a lot of commercials, which don't qualify for IMDb. So she calls me out of the blue one day when she's in high school, and she says, "How dare you?" She asked me, "How dare you do what you're doing?" I said, "What am I doing wrong? What is it?" She said, "Well, you're not doing anything wrong, but when I look at your IMDb profile, you're in the top 1%, and Robert Smith from The Cure, who's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, is not in the top 1%. What do you know that he doesn't know?" And it's really not anything I know that he doesn't know. He does a ton of great work on big movie soundtracks and all of that. I think American Psycho was one. That's how far back he goes. But we're just more prolific. We do a lot more films. We've done at least 300, maybe closer to 400. I'd have to look it up and see, and tons of credits in there. So just by adding all those credits, it builds up huge. So if someone's got a huge podcast where they're doing one a week and they've done it for 10 years or whatever it is, it's amazing. They'll get an overnight push as soon as we can get all that listed in the database. It's absolutely amazing. And then she's a little bit older. She calls me back and she's like, "I'm really mad at you, Dad, because you did it again." And I said, "Now what did I do wrong?" Because, when your teenage daughter calls you with a little bit of an attitude, you assume you did something wrong or embarrassed her in front of her friends or what have you. But this time it was, I searched you by name and you came up ahead of Robert Smith from The Cure. So at the top of Google is my dad, and then my dad's production company, and then Robert Smith from The Cure, and then some anthropologist, some archaeologist, a doctor, a lawyer, and then the NFL running back is way down here. And I said, "Does that upset you?" And she said, "No, not half as much as when the photos come up and I see pictures of my dad and all these other guys, and I don't even see a picture of the rock star from The Cure, but it'll ask on there." So I send clients that. I screenshotted that, and I use that to show people what they can do. So if your name is super original and unique, it might not be as huge a deal for you. But if you've got a popular name, I won't say common, but if your last name is, if your first name is Steve or your last name is Ramona, maybe it's popular. Maybe you don't have as much competition. But when you've got a name like Robert Smith, just to give you an idea, every time you pull me up or that name up, you're going to see at least 400 or 500 million listings for Robert Smith worldwide. And you've got to have an edge. You got to get to the top of Google search. So what's cool is, thanks to IMDb alone, my name's at the very top ahead of all those other guys. And then just to the right of it, my production company website is right there. So you can't ask for more than your personal name and your business name at the very, very tip top of IMDb. And, like I said, a lot of companies will pay 10 grand a month or more to achieve that. And you really don't have to. For under a couple of grand a year, we get it done for you. So it's one of those things that I would say is super simple, but it's not easy. If you don't know what you're doing, you're going to be frustrated with it. But, have us handle it for you. And it's overnight. People say, I worked 20 years to become an overnight success. This is one of the ways you do it. Absolutely.
Well, and I could see KPI for your show is more subscribers on YouTube because more people see it, and more downloads on your panel. Talk about that.
Yeah, they absolutely will. And it's just amazing, when people search through, and the credibility is amazing when we meet with new clients. And we do a lot of PR work, we do a lot of book publishing, we do a lot of business consulting, and a lot of film work. But nobody has to ask who we are. They see us right on the top. So if they search for anything, we're right there. I hate to say in their face, but that's where we are in Google. We're the first thing they see. So no one questions our credibility. They see that, my hair's falling out and it's turning gray, or it has turned gray. So they don't worry about experience and credibility and all that. But it's just amazing. And I'm by no means an SEO expert. I only know that machine of IMDb just drives it like nobody's business. It's kind of like, if I were to get in a Formula One car, I wouldn't be able to explain the internal combustion engine for you, but I know I could get in it and go fast. And that's what IMDb does. It works super fast.
Yeah, and having the right people do it, like you said, how to do it. I always use the mechanic. I don't want to do heart surgery on me. That's extreme, but it's like find the right people. I thank you, because audience, reach out to him. He's got such a great way If you're a guest, and I just learned that today because I'm a guest, so I'm going to add that. It's a great opportunity. I want to switch gears. I'm a big Marvel guy. Just a little secret out to my audience. I love the movies, but there's also the cartoons. You're big into cartoons in your business. Talk about where that came about and why you started doing that.
Yeah, it's absolutely wild where that came out, because I'm a real big proponent of storytelling, whether you're in sales or anything else, whether you're a teacher, you want to get a point across, tell a story, that'll get across for you. And I've got a whole chapter in our new book, Influence in Action, that talks specifically about storytelling and why it works. But to give you a real concrete example, years ago, I had some prospective clients who had a huge estate tax problem. And when either one of them died first, the spouse was going to have a $2 or $3 million estate tax problem, and they had no liquidity to pay the tax. So they had a huge problem with Uncle Sam when something happened, and they were both 80 years old at the time. So not to be cold about it, but it was just a matter of time before they had this ugly expense. And, Uncle Sam isn't very patient. They got 9 months to pay it or else. So that's the way it works. And I put together a very comprehensive estate plan for them, and their attorney recommended they look at other plans. So the long and the short of it is, I'm in competition with 6 of the biggest, brightest companies in America, and all of them have teams of, 3 or 4 financial experts, like I was at the time, 3 or 4 CPAs, 3 or 4 attorneys, and just a team of people. And everybody puts a plan together anywhere from 100 to 200 pages. So these people would read these long, massive estate plans and just get lost in it, in the minutia. They're so complicated, and their eyes would glaze over. They just had no idea what was going on. And at the end of listening to a couple of other companies pitch, they came to me and they just said, "We don't get it. Can you please explain it in a way we can understand?" So I told them a little story, and I'll just grab one of these. And this is a few years ago, but
Look at that.
yeah, The Adventures of Insurance Man. So I explained to them, imagine there's a superhero who could swoop down and solve all your problems. Here's how he's going to do it. And I went through, not in great detail how the plan works, but in overall broad strokes. This is the most simple way I can do it. This is the problem you have. Do you agree on that? Yes, we do. This is how we solve it. Do you think this is the best way to solve it? Absolutely. And they looked at me, and the husband slammed his fist down on the table, and he said, "We've been wrestling with this for 6 months. Why didn't anyone ever explain it to us that simply? Because now we get it. You're getting the business." So, funny thing about it is, it was the largest case I've ever seen, but I ran it through the Equitable Assurance Society out of Atlanta, Georgia. And at the time, it was the largest case they had had. And it was enough to make me the #1 agent with them worldwide, and also the #1 broker worldwide with Mutual of New York, and the #1 broker worldwide out of AXA Financial out of Paris. And that's 220,000 agents, brokers, and support personnel between those 3 companies. And the business this case brought in handled that. And the funny thing is, it was a silly comic book. And at the time, I didn't have the book. I just explained it, and I drew little pictures, and we spent about 20 minutes on it, and we went through the whole thing. But long and the short of it was, I earned a 6-figure commission from that one case alone, which is more than most financial professionals make in a year. So, not to toot my own horn, it's just the power of storytelling. So when you mentioned that you like Marvel, I have to confess, I absolutely love Marvel, and I love DC Comics. I grew up
Yeah.
with The Adventures of Superman, and honestly, this is an homage to George Reeves in the TV show. I've got a George Reeves autograph in my office.
Oh my God.
But the whole thing is based on that. But further than that, we add some Marvel elements. So I've got a little bit of the Hulk coming in here, and some different things. But the cool thing about it is, I used to draw very well when I was a youngster. So people, well, all through high school, college, and all that, would contract with me and say, "I need this drawn." And since I was a kid, people would pay me to draw for them. Had a car accident, broke my neck, had another one, broke my back. Now my hands don't work as well as they should. So what do? You contract with the experts. So I've got a host of professional illustrators who work for Marvel Comics, who freelance for DC Comics. And because I live right next door to Disney World, I meet Disney artists constantly. Almost every time I walk out of the house, I'll bump into one. But the cool thing is, I don't have to be able to draw anymore. I'll just contract it out depending what we need to do. We'll get either Marvel, DC Comics, or a Disney artist on the job, and they do spectacular work. And the cool thing is, we did this comic for insurance people that we license out to them. And it's not complex estate cases, but it's more basic life and annuity cases that any entry level, even insurance agent can use. And I've seen agents come in and use that and triple or quadruple their insurance production in their first year alone. So it's just amazing. And the nice thing about storytelling, it works everywhere. I can do it for mortgage people. I can do the same thing for lawyers, for doctors. We've got a ton of things we're working on, and it doesn't have to be insurance man. It could be insurance woman. That doesn't matter. But there's almost no company out there that works in sales that we can't put some kind of persuasive comic together for. And it influences customers like crazy, because if people can understand, they'll buy. And it's the old adage, a confused mind always says no. And I saw that firsthand with all these great, fantastic companies and all these high level, high end, attorneys, accountants, whatever, they couldn't get the job done. But if you make it, tell a story, make it so people understand, they're with you 100%. So we help people understand to make it easier for professionals to sell what they need to sell. Because at the end of the day, if they're doing the right thing for clients, it helps the client more than it helps the salesperson.
Well, and I
And
want
that's
to add
what
to
we
this.
do.
Yeah, thank you. A servant heart does exactly what you did. Yeah, you made six figures because you brought value, but what you did is you served that couple by when he pounded you nailed it.
Right,
You
yeah.
changed their life, their trajectory of their 8-year-old life to make it better. That's what a servant does. Hey, abundance is good. You can
Yeah.
get abundance if you're serving, and of course, we won't get into that. You take care of your abundance properly. You
Right.
do the right things with it. So I love that you said that. I don't know if you want to tell the story, but you told me when I first met you the story in Chicago when you went to that restaurant. I don't know if you're allowed to say it, but it really told me the story about the guy, the mob boss you met. And I don't know if you could, because when I want to tell this story, audience, I want you to listen. It's a great story from a story aspect, but I want people to understand you can be a servant by saying no.
Yes, you can. Yeah, you absolutely
So if
can.
you
And
could
it's
tell
funny.
that story, I think it's a great story.
Yeah, and you threw me for a second because I'm thinking I've been to Chicago a lot and I've got a million Chicago stories. I'm thinking, what did I do in Chicago? It was actually in Detroit where I'm from. So
Okay. Sorry,
that's
audience.
fine.
See, I love you clarifying it. I love it.
Yep, no problem at all. But yeah, it's funny because my grandfather, while he was alive, used to be in the trucking business, and he's got the greatest stories. But he, more than anything else, had connections, just because he worked with both sides, the labor side, the management side, whether auto disputes or whatever it is. But his company used to haul steel, and my brother used to work for him. My uncle used to drive for him. My other uncle used to work in the office, but they used to haul steel for the big three automakers, Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler. And as I came up through the financial services business, I was with an advanced markets agency at John Hancock in Southfield, Michigan. And the majority of my clients were executives from Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler. So that's, automotive is kind of where I come from. But the long and the short of it is, he calls me up one day and says, I have a lead for you, and I don't know if you want to take it or not. And I said, have you ever known me to turn down a good lead? He says, well, this one you're going to need to think about. I've got someone who wants you to handle a major pension, and it's probably going to be worth $3 or $4 million a year to you. But I'm not going to say it's not without risk. So, I said, let me talk to you about it. And come to find out, my grandfather had set up a meeting for me to meet with Mr. Vince Mealy, who at the time in the early 90s was the mob boss for the city of Detroit for, I can't remember which family, I've got it in my notes, but we're going to make a film about it. And I'm casting some people to play me now, and I'm going to play him because at the time he was probably in his 70s and I was 25 years old. So I need somebody else to play me, and I'll play the elder gentleman. But funny thing is, it was exactly like watching a scene from The Godfather. So I drive to this restaurant in Dearborn, Michigan, called Andiamo's, and it's a big, giant Italian restaurant right on Michigan Avenue, right on the main strip in Dearborn, where Ford headquarters are and all of that. And I drive in, and I don't know if it was a Tuesday afternoon or what it was, but it was right in the middle of the business day lunch hour. And this is one of the most popular restaurants in Detroit. So I'm thinking, did I get the day wrong? Or they shut down for remodeling? There is no one in this parking lot. This is an empty parking lot. Did I get my days wrong? What's going on? So long and the short of it, I park my car, I go inside, and I'm met at the door with, I don't know what they're called, capos or, guards or whatever it is, but I open the door, I immediately get frisked, I go through the whole thing. And again, it's just like a scene from The Godfather. And, how are you doing, Mr. Smith? Follow me. And I'm looking around, there's nobody in the restaurant. It's closed. And I'm thinking, this is a super busy, popular restaurant. Why is it closed? And I walk through this empty restaurant. I go to the back of the restaurant, and all of a sudden I feel like I'm Al Pacino or something. But I go in there, and this gentleman's sitting down having a salad, and he gets up to shake my hand and greet me. And I sit down. They say, whatever you like, and I order. I can't remember what it was, but we get to talking, and he's talking about my grandfather and the business that they had done over the years. Not specific or anything, because it was none of my business. But hey, I've known him for a long time. And do you know this guy, that guy? And I'm thinking, yeah, I know Jimmy Hoffa. Yeah, I know this guy. Yeah, I know that guy. Of course I do. So we're talking. And the long and the short of it, we finish up a quick lunch. And he says, I'm just going to ask you one time. And I said, absolutely. What is it? And he's asked me, would you like to manage the Teamsters pension? And I said, I would absolutely love to manage the Teamsters pension. Who wouldn't want a high profile client like you guys? Of course I want to do that. And we're going through the whole thing. And then the strangest thing happens. We stand up to shake hands and seal the deal. And just like in the movies, he pulls me in. And it was one of the most amazing things I've ever had happen. And he looks me in the eye and he says, I got to tell you one thing, though. And I said, well, what's that? And he said, well, the Teamsters don't like to lose. And I'm thinking, well, of course not. I don't like to lose either. And when he says that, all of a sudden, I have this image in my mind, like I'm walking down the street one night and maybe I've lost a few bucks for them. And a couple of guys are chasing me down an alley. And then he said, did you hear what I said? And I said, yes, sir. I heard exactly what you said. And he pulls me in again closer. And he says, I don't like to repeat myself, but the Teamsters do not like to lose. So now all of a sudden, the message is coming in a little louder and clearer, even though he's taking it down and he's whispering, because we're almost nose to nose at this point. And now I'm thinking, in the back of my head, I see my brand new wife, my new bride, walking down the street at night, and I see a couple of guys following her, and I'm thinking, wow, that's not good at all. And just like in the movies, he pulls me in even closer, where now we can smell what each other had for lunch. That's how close we are. And he says, do you understand when I'm telling you we don't like to lose? And at that moment, I had this flash forward, I guess, in my mind, and I could envision the same hoods in my mind. Maybe it was the same guys in the restaurant that welcomed me in. I don't know. But I had a brand new baby at the time, brand new, and she's in her crib. And I can see guys like Jimmy in the window to try to get in and snatch her out of the crib. And I said, you know what, sir, you're right. I know you don't like to lose. I don't like to lose. I don't expect I would ever lose you a dime. However, I'm not willing to take that chance because I read you loud and clear. But what I would like to do is refer you to some other gentlemen I know who are top-notch brokers. They'll handle it for you. They'll be glad to do it. And he said, no, thank you. It's either you or I'll find somebody else, but I don't want any referrals. And this meeting ends here, and this meeting never happened. And yes, sir. And very nice to meet you, and walked out the door and never saw the man again. So it was one of those where, was I willing to take the chance just for myself? 100%, absolutely. For my wife, I'll be honest, maybe I wasn't supposed to, or I shouldn't have, or maybe people don't care for that, but I was thinking about it. But when it came time to my child, there was no way I would take even a 100th of a percent chance that anything could happen to her. So I turned down what would have been the biggest deal of my life, at that point, for certain. So I didn't take it. So you can say no, and there's nothing wrong with it. But even terrifying people will respect you if you say no. So don't ever be afraid to say no, is the only advice I can give out of that story.
Well, and Rob, I think you said that because that's what I was thinking when I first heard the story. That he wasn't like, didn't have this meeting. I thank you and move on. I'll take care of it myself. if a mob boss you can say no to and you're still living today,
Yeah.
and saying no to an everyday person, or they say no to you, is not going to affect your life. I love
It's
that.
not going to affect you. Or,
Yeah.
what I would say too is there are a lot of times where you might do business with somebody you don't care for, or down the road you're going to regret it, or they're just a pain in the neck client. You can tell right from the get-go. Don't put yourself through it. You can say no to them. You can say no to anyone. And the funny thing is, you make a decision like that and you always wonder, did I make the right decision? Because it's life-changing either way. Did I do the right thing? And then I did some more research on him after the fact. And this is the early 90s. So there's no internet, there's no Google, there's none of that. But I did some research. I went down to the newspaper, talked to them, and I pulled up some old clippings. And he was one of the people suspected, I'll say suspected most respectfully, in the Jimmy Hoffa disappearance, and some other fellas who I forget their names. But he wasn't a man to be trifled with, so we'll just leave it at that. And I feel like even to this day I made the right call, but it's one of those you look back and you say, who knows if I did the right thing or not. But I feel
And
like
and the crazy thing, 3 to 4 million a year you passed on, but
yeah.
guess what? You're still here and you're successful.
Yeah,
So things
absolutely.
are great. You're doing great. Let's have some fun. I want to have some fun with you, Robert. So we'll go back to a restaurant. It's funny, I just told the story that. So you're walking into a restaurant. It's a fun restaurant. It's a good restaurant.
Okay.
And there's 4 seats. You're sitting in one seat. The other 3 seats are dead or alive, people you want to invite. Why would you invite them? But the most important thing, what would you order for food?
Oh man. I'll settle for just one, but I would love to have a beer and a hot dog with Babe Ruth. Or are you kidding me? That would just be the coolest thing in history. I mean, I'm an old ball player, but just to talk to him, and it's not just the baseball, but financially, the guy was a legend, still is. But he was asked one time, and I forget what the exact dollar amount was, but they said, "You realize you make more money than the president?" And he laughed it off and said, "Well, I had a better year than he had." So, a guy like that would be pretty cool to sit down with, I think.
Who would be
Absolutely.
the other 2? Take a shot at it.
Take a shot at it's kind of silly, but ever since I was a kid, I always thought it would be cool to have a meal with Paul McCartney, just because he's a guy who made probably more money than any of the Beatles for certain, but more money at any given time than most other musicians alive. And I'm sure he's been passed or so. I heard recently he's the first one to a billion or something before Taylor Swift. I don't know, but that's just on the creative side, somebody who could be so creative, but at the same time be such a good business person. That's a blend that's hard to find. And I actually, I mentioned the fact that I broke my neck and back in a couple of car accidents that weren't my fault. I got rear-ended a couple of times at high speeds. But it's amazing because when I thought I wasn't going to be able to walk ever again, and I spent about 6 months walking with 2 braces where I really had a difficult time walking, and I was going into surgeries. I had, I think, 14 of them. And I was told, you're never going to walk again. So you need to face that and figure out what you're going to do with the rest of your life. So I immediately took 2 screenwriting courses, degree programs, one at UCLA out west, one online here at Full Sail in Orlando, and completed them simultaneously and finished at the top of my class with both, not because I wanted to be number one, but just because I thought if I've got to do a new career shift, I better become good at it. So that was what I did. And thankfully, I'm back walking now. Everything's good. But now I've got something a little bit unique where, like Paul, I've got the creative side we can do, but also the business side. And mostly on the creative side, like with the comic books, we're focusing on how we can help other business owners make more money, how their salespeople can make more sales, how they might go from $1 million company to a $10 million company in a short period of time.
I love it. Most important for me is, what food would you order?
Oh, with McCartney, he's a vegan, and I think I might order a big fat steak just to see if he'd still sit with me or if he'd get up and walk away. I don't know.
Oh, that's great. Babe Ruth would eat a steak too. And by the way, Babe Ruth would be multiple beers. It wouldn't be one, as we know about Babe.
Yeah, I'd give it my best shot. I don't think I could keep up with the man, but I'd
No.
give it a try. And then the third person, that's a very good question. Probably Thomas Edison, because he's the most prolific inventor I can think of. And I'm from Metro Detroit. When my kids were small, we took them to the Henry Ford Museum and Greenfield Village, and it was just fantastic to see what those two men did separately and combined, because they were lifelong friends, or at least in their older ages. People like that. And that was one of the things I wrote about in our most recent book is stand on the shoulders of giants. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to, invent the assembly line, but learn from Henry Ford, learn from Thomas Edison, learn from Benjamin Franklin or anybody. Everything's laid out. We know what works. We've seen what works. So if you're doing advertising, like I read David Ogilvy just because everything the man did seemed to work. And if it didn't, he would test it until he found something that would work. So I just look at what other people did and just, don't try to imitate it exactly, but how can I adapt what they did to my situation? And it worked well with the big three automakers in Detroit, and it helped me get to #1 with several Fortune 100 companies, several Fortune 500 companies. And I tell everybody else, if it'll work for some guy from Detroit, it'll work for you, because most people had a lot more advantages than I had, coming up and, health wise or whatever. So if I can do it, you can do it.
That's great. What a great table too. How can people find the book?
On Amazon, Influence in Action. It's actually a series we created because I started with just one book. I did some work with Robert Cialdini. We partnered with him. He wrote the book Influence, The Psychology of Persuasion, back in 1984. I think he sold over 5 million copies of that alone. Plus his other books, I think, did another 3 million copies. And he's helped my practice. Well, I've met him recently, but 20 years ago, before I even knew him, I'd already been living a lot of the 7 principles that he's got, and just following, the people I talked about before, some of the founding fathers and great inventors and so forth. But I'd always been in the top 1% worldwide in financial services, but never the very top. So I ran across his book that outlines the 7 principles of influence. And within 6 months, I was #1 with 3 Fortune 500 companies and killing it with a bunch of others. So I have to credit him for a lot of that. So our Influence in Action series started as one book that talks about his 7 specific strategies, and it's available on Amazon. We're going to launch it July 31st. It's in pre-sales now. Apple Books, it's going to be Barnes & Noble. So anywhere you buy books online, you can find it. It'll be digital version. You can do Kindle, you can do anything else, paperback, hardcover, all of that. But Amazon is where everybody normally goes. It's right there. And it hit so well. We had so many co-authors come into that some others came in and said, how do we join up? So now we put out a second book, and now we're already on our 4th book in the series. And I just started this back in February. So so if anyone out there is an influencer, if you influence clients, if you influence through podcasts, talk to me, and we'll put you in one of the books. It's probably one of the better things you can do for authority-based marketing. And if I can sell 6-figure commissions with comic books, and not from comic book sales, but product and service sales, people can do it with books. And we did a book with a publisher out of London back in 2018 called Sales Genius #1, which is around here somewhere. But that book, it's funny, we released it the exact same time that the Wolf of Wall Street released his book, Straight Line Selling Method. And I've got screenshots from Amazon in the UK and Australia, here in the States and Canada, where we're #1 everywhere and he's #2. And the funny thing about him, and I've got nothing against him, great movie. I'd like to have Leo DiCaprio play me in a movie. That's never going to happen. But in financial services, most of our clients are financial services agencies. So boutique investment firms or insurance firms, what have you. And a lot of times we'll say, who are you looking at besides our firm for consulting? And the answer almost always comes back, well, we're talking to Belfort. We like his straight line selling method. So I ask these businesses the same question every time. Do you want to spend 10 times the money to work with that firm for second best? Or do you want to just work with us and be #1 in your industry and be #1 with whatever you do? And they're like, well, how do you do that? So I send them the screenshots, and here's us, and here's the wolf standing like this at #2, and our book's at #1. So, I'm not saying that to knock him at all. It's just the point of the matter is I had 8 financial services agency last year that was the question about who were they going to do business with. And 8 out of 8 of those companies did business with us. And it was that just authority piece of having the book. He's got a book, but ours came in ahead of his. And then when they Google search us, he comes up at the top because his name's a little more unique, and he's obviously got the movie behind them. But when we come up ahead of Robert Smith, that's usually, from The Cure, that's more than enough for people to say, okay, we'll talk to you.
Yeah,
We'll
absolutely.
do
It opens
business.
doors. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know you mentioned before, real quick, how can people get a hold of you?
Yeah, it's smithprofits.com. We've got a contact form. We do a 20-minute consultation for anyone. Doesn't cost a dime. So smithprofits.com, just go to the contact page. Our calendar is right there. You'll see a lot of the things that we do on there. A lot of people we work with, Dr. Cialdini, Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank, you name it. There's a lot of people we work with. Forbes Riley does a lot of work with us. But yeah, we can help you get into a book. We can help you do a book of your own. Whatever you need to do to get in front of people, to rank at the top of Google search, whatever you need, just let us know. And if we can't do it for you, we'll find somebody who can do it for you.
There's the servant's heart right there, audience. Hey,
Yes, sir.
Robert, thank you for being on. This has been incredible. Great
Thank you.
stories, which I'm so glad you shared with our audience. And audience, don't forget about my TV show, Together We Serve, every Friday at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. And as always, me and Robert, thank you so much for watching or listening to this podcast. And we'll see you on the next episode of Doing Business with a Servant's Heart. See you soon.